Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Portland. How about this weather? We ordered it special for you. Welcome to Forest 2016. I'd like to invite our Executive Vice President and Provost, Dr. Jenny Mladevenek. I can never say your last name, Jenny, I'm so sorry. But we'll just call you the most wonderful Jenny. And I just want to thank Jenny in particular for all of your support at OHSU and all the support that OHSU has brought to bring all of you here from all around the world. So thank you, Jenny, and thank you, OHSU.
You know, I'm thrilled to be here and to congratulate our wonderful library and you all on this incredible conference. How many of you are from outside of the United States? Whoa, oh my goodness. How many of you are having your first trip to Portland? Oh, even more. So this is great, you're right in the heart, and I'm hoping that you'll have some opportunity to enjoy the wonderful weather, the wonderful view, and actually take our very novel transportation method up the hill to OHSU. It's probably the only place you can come in which you can say you commute by tram between our buildings and between the waterfront and the hill. Everybody knows Melissa. You probably also know that our library faculty at OHSU are leaders in trying to break communication barriers between information science and research science. Melissa's work on the Monarch Initiative is a great example of how communication spurs the progress that can and must be made to improve human health. We have so much information about our genome, but we still don't understand why certain genes are mutated, or why mutation matters, or why, in fact, if you actually have a mutation, it sometimes doesn't matter. We have so much information from many kinds of organisms, from yeast to flies to mice to humans. But so much of this information is locked up in data science and discrete data sets that don't talk to one another. Melissa's leading the charge to standardize these data so that we see how a mutation in a yeast gene can affect human cancer. It's essentially a communication problem. As academicians, researchers, and scholars, we know that communicating well is very difficult. It's a challenge to make ourselves understood to someone in a different research field. We all have special vocabularies and our special terms of art, our abbreviations, and even our jargon. Researchers write papers for others in their own fields, not for people in different fields. This is, of course, a well-known problem. But communication is more than the words we use. OHSU is actually the state's only academic health center where we train the next generation of providers of all kinds, and they will care for thousands of patients. So virtually, in an academic health center, communication is about life and death. Communication failures are the leading contributor to medical error, one of the most common causes of death in the United States. But communication failures are very complicated. Bad information is part of the problem, but it's not the only thing that can go wrong. In a clinical setting, communication failures are also because of things like uncertainty over roles, who's supposed to do what. It's also about hierarchy and perceived authority. It's actually about how we learn to work together at a very young age. That's why we are trying to change the way we train and educate our next generation of health providers. And that's called interprofessional education. We've talked about this actually for 50 years, but we haven't been very good about it. We still have educated in our silos, one school at a time, one discipline at a time. So we really need to learn how to talk together, to understand each other's roles from the very, very beginning. We also need to develop new kinds of tools, and we need to learn how to use these tools. Take the electronic health record. That was supposed to be the way that we would communicate between our patients, among our providers, and from provider to patient. Well, it's amazing to see how far we've come. We actually can read handwriting now. We actually can manage getting the decimal place in the right place for pharmaceuticals. But guess what? One of our researchers at OHSU has really discovered that we still have massive communication problems. Communications about how one provider uses the electronic record, like a nurse, and how that actually is still siloed from the physician or the pharmacist or anybody else who writes in that electronic health record. So welcome to the new world of trying to figure out communication. We really need to figure out how to use these data in new ways and how to understand what these data mean. We need to figure out how we'll use the data for all of our patients now and how we'll use those data for the patients of the future. So I love the concept that you're having this kind of a conference. You're trying to break down the barriers to scholarly and research communication. You're visualizing data in new ways to disrupt how we normally communicate research. And you're sharing your data to solve problems, even new problems that we see every day, for instance, like Zika. You're finding new ways to annotate the vast information on the web so that actually it's more useful. And most importantly, you're coming together to talk about these issues. My hope is that you will take this opportunity to get to know one another, as it seems like you have for the last number of conferences, and you'll have a great time doing that and looking at a little bit of Portland along your way. Welcome to Force 16.
Well, I think if that wasn't a call to action, I don't know what is. Thank you so very much, Jenny. I think that it's really hard to understand all the potential that we have in the world to do good if we can just connect our knowledge and communicate better. So thank you all for coming to Portland. Now I'm going to try to get us out of this and into my talk, if I can. Okay, I am not a PC person. Who's the person who's supposed to make this go? Sorry, Nicole. Communication dysfunction between Macs and PCs. Thanks, just make it. Awesome, thanks. So, I read this book recently, and I really enjoyed it. It was a really special book, and I would really urge you all to read it. But there was on almost every page in this book, there was a quote about sort of what it means to be human. And I thought this quote was particularly appropriate for the opening of Force 2016. So human knowledge is never contained within one person. It grows from the relationships that we create between one another and the world, each other and the world, and still it is never complete. So we are all here today to help make the world more complete by talking to each other and learning to talk to each other and building tools to talk to each other and moving information from person to person all around the world. So in that sense, you are all emissaries to the rest of the world in our mission within Force 11 to help promote improved communication and access to knowledge across the world. So now some administrative details. We really want the conversation to continue on Twitter, so everyone can get online. There should be ample power and Wi-Fi for that conversation to happen. The network and password are here. Hopefully everybody's found that. I wanted to talk a little bit about who's actually here. We have 340 and counting, I think maybe even more now, people here from representing 25 countries. As far as I can tell from any conference that I attend normally, that's a much larger number of countries represented. and we'd like to have that number grow and grow over the years. There's an actual online interactive map available at that bit.ly up there. Let's see, does this work? Yep. And if you see that your information that's represented there is missing or incorrect, please let us know and we'd be happy to add it. There are some last-minute additions to the I also wanted to thank our fellows. We had, I believe, 80 help be emissaries to many of the countries that are represented here from around the world. So thanks to our fellows for their attendance. Some more homework for you all. In your swag bag, there was a little booklet, and we have some extras if you've lost yours. In this book, this is a very important booklet because this booklet is going to require you to talk to different people from different communities. Hi, Denise. So you can read, Denise has been blogging by interacting with many of the presenters and participants over the past few months, and she'll be writing some blogs about the event. So if you have something that you think is really important to be blogged about, please find her and talk to her about that, and we'd love to have more content on her blog. I also wanted to mention we are debuting a new platform called OpenVivo, which is an institution-independent research profiling tool that allows you to track your contributions to a variety of different types of scholarly products, so not just publications and grants as per traditional tooling, but really aiming to understand better the types of contributions that we all make to scholarship across the ecosystem. And this was a collaboration between the Vivo team, the Attribution Working Group, who defined a large number of contributions to a variety of different contribution types and not just authorship, and the ontology group that had built some of the semantic infrastructure that relates many of the different toolings that represent aspects of the research ecosystem, called the Open Research Information Framework. And those links are there, and we'd love to have your participation in this. If you have not done so, you need an ORCID, and there are instructions in your swag bag about how to get yourself an ORCID and get yourself logged into the OpenVivo system. And we would, the attribution group would very much be grateful if you would please claim your profile and tell us what were your contributions. I want to thank Figshare. Figshare is hosting our conference collection, and that information that's being put into Figshare is not just being used as a conference collection, but it's actually your contributions to this event, and you can tag your role in your relationship to those contributions here in the OpenVivo system because we've pulled in all the Figshare data, and I believe it's being updated on an hourly basis. So if you have any questions, Mike Conlon over here has been managing that. Will you raise your hand? Okay. Thank you so much for participating in the Attribution Working Group and the OpenVivo's efforts to try to better understand the types of contributions that we're all making to our scholarship. There were actually, so far, 744 different contributions that have been claimed in the system, spanning 55 different types of contributions that does not include authorship. So these are all the things that are not authorship that we're actually contributing to the research ecosystem. So thanks so much to everyone for participating in that. And finally, I just wanted to make a great big round of applause for our sponsors. Without these sponsors, many of you would not be here. In particular, our the fellowships were funded by Sloan, NIH, and NSF, and so we were really, really grateful, especially for that particular funding, but for all of the funding that all the sponsors contributed. And also a thank you to you all you sponsors in the audience, for sort of agreeing to the terms of this unusual conference where everyone gets a say, whether you're a very large corporation or a single individual. And we really thank you for not bringing informational tables and things like that, but it's really your voice here at the table across the world and across different sectors where everyone can be equally at the table that's so important. So I really just thank you all for your sponsors conversations happen with individuals from, far away with large corporations. It's just not possible in very many places. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to invite Cameron up to figure out who we are. I don't know if you wanted to see that.
So, this is meant to be an interactive conference. This is meant to be an interactive group of people. I'm just trying to figure out how to get this full screen. So, first things first. Does the Wi-Fi work? Yes. You should all be on it. It should be notionally able to cope with 3 devices each, was the specification given. So, now, does the interaction work? You should be able to go to that web address, pop in that number, and we're actually going to be using this platform for a number of sessions over the course of the meeting, and so we do want you to test whether this works, and that's part of why I'm using it in this intro. But I'm also using it because we want to figure out how to communicate across different communities, and I made a point as we started a little late that academics are tardy in showing up to meetings, and Jenny reminded me by saying, well, there's this divide between clinician academics and non-clinician academics in terms of arrival times and promptness, and probably between different disciplines. So it was a reminder to me that we need to think very carefully about the different communities involved and who's coming. And as an organisation, that's something we've been really working on this year. So let's start with the slight confusion about the 11 and the 16. Force 2016 is the conference, and Force 11 is the organisation that is behind this conference, amongst other things and amongst a bunch of other activities you're going to see over the course of the next couple of days. We're an organisation that formed out of meetings that were held in 2011, and that's why the 11 is there, and the name stands for the Future of Research Communication and E-Scholarship. The E-Scholarship there is both to remind us that it's more than just research, but also because fork didn't really have the same resonance as force as a name. And it's been a really important year for the organisation. The organisation has to a certain extent been the product of the enthusiasms of the group of people that came together in 2011 and wanted to take things forward. And what we've really started to do is to move it from a small group of people trying to bring a broader community together to try and turn it into a sustainable, community-led organisation. We held the first elections for our executive board late last year. And we're planning to work on that and move on that again this year. But we really want to figure out how to listen to you to figure out what the organisation is for and what you want from it. So I'm glad no one's asleep and not excited to be here. So moving on to the next one. And again, tell me if this doesn't work. I don't actually have a... so this is going to produce a word cloud. And it should produce a word cloud live, because the point of this exercise is to listen to you. Let me tell you a little parable. A lot of us talk about silos. A lot of us worry about and are concerned about the silos and the lack of communication we see them. It's like we're looking out across this plain and seeing these different conversations happening behind walls, behind the blocks of communication between these different communities. And we talk to these people and ask them to pull down those walls, and we often get frustrated, maybe even and shout at some of those people about how things need to change. And sometimes they listen, and sometimes they don't. And what I want to suggest is that we need to pull our view back and realise that we're sitting in our own silo. And of course, if you're going to shout from the inside of a silo at the walls, so the question is, how do we communicate together across different communities, across the very different and disparate communities we have in the room? How do we make that representative and democratic in a world in which we can only bring the people who are interested in care to the table, and how do we make the table big enough? And so the theme of this conference, the theme of what we're trying to do, is to find the ways in which we bring those voices together, that we find ways to listen, and we find ways to communicate effectively. And obviously have some fun along the way, some of the things that are appearing in that word cloud. So Force 11 is an organisation, it's an organisation that grew out of a meeting, it grew out of a community. And we're looking at the question of what we are, what we're for, how that's different to other organisations. And we're actually in the middle of thinking about how to craft a mission statement, a vision that really illustrates and communicates. And these different factors, these different issues and things that bring you here are the things we need to work out how to balance and how to manage. You're supposed to come up with a distinction so we can figure out how to prioritise them, not to say that they're all equally important. You're not helping me here. But these are the things we have to figure out, and that's what the next year is going to be about for the organisation, I think. You know, figuring out how we make it financially sustainable, how we bring the voices together, how we bridge communities, and how we make sure we're being effective and unique and different to what other people are doing. I started by saying that the organisation was moving from a group of enthusiasts to a broader community, and that's not in no way does that mean that those enthusiasts are being left behind. I particularly want to call out my predecessor as president, Mary Ann Martoni, who's done really an enormous amount of work and dedicated a huge amount of her time over the last several years to building us to the point where we can start to have these conversations and turn it into a sustainable organisation. So I really want to recognise that huge contribution. And indeed, our other outgoing board members and the other board members who you can meet over the course of the meeting. So the final question is, what do you happen? And you're not waving at me, Danny. I almost had forgotten. I haven't quite finished yet. So one of the sessions this afternoon, there is a very explicit chance for you to come up on stage and talk about what you know. So that we're looking for about possibly 3 to 4 volunteers to be part of the, what's the final name we're calling it?
Oh, it's very long, but it's about data sharing.
About data sharing. So if you've got opinions about data sharing and you're not afraid to share them, in a game format, you know, then talk to Danny about doing that. But also find the opportunities to have the conversations. Look at all of these things that other people are wanting to get out of the conference and see how you can contribute to that. At the end of the day, what I think we need to do is to start by breaking down the walls that we build around us so that we can start to communicate across all of the boundaries. So I will finish there and I will hand over to Mercedes Croesus, who's going to be the chair of the first session. Enjoy the conference, enjoy Portland, and have fun.